I've never done it.
Oh, there we go.
All
I
right.
see the blue.
Press it, don't repress it.
All right, guys. Dhamma YouTube, welcome. Make sure before we get into it, you like and subscribe and share this video to your grandmother and
And
all that good
grandfather,
stuff.
cousins, etc.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Scott, we were just discussing the how procrastination becomes harder when one is practicing in earnest and one is sort of aware. And you were about to like piggyback on what I had just said.
Yeah. So it reminded me of something Dhammarato was saying, and so there's two types of like procrastination. There's like the good type of procrastination where saying, I don't need to do this, like whatever, and it's like a relief to procrastinate. Then that type of procrastination is good because it's it's dukkha nirodha. So like that's our mission.
Right.
Our mission is dukkha nirodha. So whatever is dukkha nirodha is good, but so it comes from the fear of not the like the reason why you didn't want to procrastinate was because you're afraid of something. You're afraid you're not going to get this done, or what's going to happen if I don't do this. Whereas for you, it was the opposite. And this has happened, both situations happen where you're procrastinating out of the fear of doing it. So the fear is opposite. So in that case, dukkha nirodha would to be just do it, because that's why. So you're not actually enjoying procrastinating. You're just yeah. So it's important to not confuse the two, because then you'll just be rationalizing living in fear and
right. And it's like
restless. Yeah.
Hindrances are kind of stacking on top of each other.
Right.
And
right.
And in that case, you try and throw it out and it comes right back so fast. During meditation, not in meditation, it's just right there staring you in the face. And then I think a lot of people's strategy is to go, okay, let's numb it. Let's do something to numb the discomfort that this pressing situation is having on us. Let's watch TV, let's drink, let's whatever people do,
Yeah.
Rather than looking at investigating, okay, why am I procrastinating, and what's the worst that's going to happen once I go into the process. And yeah, once it's over, it's over. And yeah, but that's what I mean. It's harder. It sounds strange. It's harder to procrastinate than before, but I've found it really has been harder to procrastinate. So, yeah.
Like, some way you might want to rephrase that is, it's easier to do things rather than it's harder to procrastinate. So both is true, but I think something that the good practice leads to is a kind of like sense of effortlessness. Like things are easier, like things are simplified. So like before enlightenment you chop wood and carry water, and then after enlightenment you chop wood and carry water, just without all the dukkha involved. So like you could like literally do what is need to be done without a sense of dukkha and resentment of having to do it. It's kind of like a natural action that just kind of like it ends up making like things very, very simple. And even tasks that were used to be believed to be like they're kind of like triggering things to do, like, oh fuck, I don't want to do that. You realize like there's no boogeyman and like just actually doing it, and it's like there's nothing to be afraid of, and it just naturally flows on its own. So what you'll find is, like you're saying, all those things that you were doing to avoid stuff, you can stop doing. Like you don't need to numb
Right.
the pain. Yeah, you don't need to numb the pain or like try to escape some sort of like existential dread, like stopping you from doing stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So
But
that was some good insight on that. There's some good insight. So and then of course the very next time I sat down it was like, phew, awesome.
sweet.
Yeah, because everything was really cleared up. The air was really sweeter at that point. So yeah. Anyway.
I find the way you described that interesting. The air was really sweet. That's a good good way to put like what like effective ānāpānasati is like when you're really you're taking deeper breaths and you're enjoying them, the air is sweet. There's a fragrance to it. Like the actual experience of breathing is like an enjoyable experience. Like whereas it might be seen neutral before, you just didn't even notice it. You start to actually see how enjoyable it really is to breathe and take like deep breaths, like energizing breaths. And then at that point, like when you're enjoying just your breath, like you don't need to numb the pain anymore. Like there's nothing to run from, because like that's the primary experience of like literally being alive, and then the body is like breathing. So that's like the number one like intimate like thing. So uh that's why it's the main method. Like that's it, because you literally don't need anything else. Like you kind of like empty yourself out from anything else in the bare fragrance of the sweetness of the breath, and that translates to all kinds of other effective insights, uh, different jhanic experiences, and sila. So like if you're taking deep breaths and you're like calming down, you're most likely probably going to translate into just being a better person in like different like situations you're encountered with. Like if you're just like breathing and enjoying your breath, you're probably not going to get pissed off at that guy at the grocery store, or like when someone cuts you off in traffic, or all these kinds of issues, or somebody tells you like somebody criticizes your work, or like like authoritatively like tells you something, you go, oh, like, okay, I see what you're saying. I didn't think about it that way. And then you carry on with with whatever it is you're doing anyway. So it's like kind of an unfuckwithableness of being above it all when you're literally just enjoying your breath. Like how much more simple can it get than that?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a real like reliable security to it. I mean, it is such a easy thing to come back to, and it's there for you. So yeah, and it gives you a wonderful vantage point as well to like carry out, life without getting all sucked under the muck. Yeah.
You mucksucker. Nice.
Yeah.
DJ and the Mucksuckers. Fantastic.
Yeah, and
New band.
yeah, and that's another good point you bring up, is that many meditators are just like bogged down in some kind of like a not particularly awake state, not particularly enjoyable state, not particularly alive state. Whereas the simple antidote to that is just taking deep, energizing breaths. Like it literally changes your physiology. And like I never like the first thing you learn about meditation is like, oh, the breath, right? Meditate on the breath. And like I never like considered like the full impact of actually changing intentionally your breathing would be. I kind of just wrote it off. Like that's like the most cliche meditation object there is. But the way we do it, or the way the Buddha taught it, is not as a meditation object. Not like, oh, this is what I'm going to concentrate on now. Like this is my object of meditation, to hide from all the scary boogeymans in my mind. Like, no, it's I'm taking deep breaths and really breathing.
Yeah.
And that's literally changing how I feel. Like it's like a causal relationship. It's not like it's whether you think about it spiritually, experientially, or physiologically. Whatever way you put it, like it changes how you feel. And like um uh you don't need to do it like all the time. Like again, like little spurts here and there. Like, oh, like when you remember, like 10 minutes like sprinkled throughout the day, like that's enough. Like that carries it through. And like the momentum of like even 30 seconds even 30 seconds of taking some, like, oh, take some deep breaths, like it literally changes like the momentum of how your mind is operating. In the same way, like, I don't know, like almost sometimes it can be like if you're just like snort a line of coke or something, it just whoo, like it just wakes you up. Like, and like
your jug metaphors are hilarious.
yeah. Like, I mean, like these people are like chasing the high of the coke, but like you're never gonna chase the high of the breath, because the breath
catch
is,
the dragon. You never catch
you're
the
always
dragon.
breathing. Like you're always breathing, so like you literally, like, there's nothing to chase after, because you already have the breath and you have it like every single moment. So it's like a coming into this experience when you enjoy something in this experience. And it doesn't even have to be the breath. If you find anything that's enjoyable, like that's a sensory experience, like an enjoyable sensory experience that's like presenting itself in this moment, and then this moment, this moment, this moment, this moment, that's how you bring yourself into the right samādhi, or the right collectedness of jhana. So like the breath is like I mean, the breath is essentially like taking better breaths will like make more enjoyable like sensations. And like enjoyable sensations is uh that's where you want to hang out. Like, and like uh if you can do that, just do that. Like thinking the wholesome thoughts is like for the sake of that. Like throwing out unwholesome thoughts and thinking wholesome thoughts. Why do we do that? Because it makes, like, it literally, we start relaxing and enjoying like the sensory experience of reality. And that's where you live. Like that's your house. Like that's what so if you can just go straight to that without the middleman of thinking wholesome thoughts or throwing out unwholesome, that's wholesome. Like that's wholesome. Anything that brings you into the present experience.
Or middle woman.
Or middle woman. Yes, we don't want to be we want to be
The
all
middle,
inclusive here.
the
Like,
middle person. You can do without the middle
person. Yeah.
It's also quite interesting how like eventually the breath gets us started, like remembering to be here and now, but then eventually as things come true in life and we're at work or we're in the street and something happens, that kind of reminds us to take a breath. Like any situation actually becomes an opportunity to actually be awakened right now in this particular moment. So essentially you can go through your day functioning happily, and then as soon as you see dukkha, you can take a breath and look at it and then throw it out. Or you don't even have to look at it. If you know it's already dukkha, you can just throw it out. But if it's not, you can take a look at it, enjoy it, and then let it go. So that's like the fascinating thing I see at work a lot nowadays, is like dodging, like I do Thai boxing, so for me it's like slipping punches. Whenever there's like comments or whenever I notice myself telling myself a story, I'm like dodging it all the time, like slipping. There's no target here, there's nobody here, I'm just taking a breath.
Yeah, I do a lot of that with transitions, moving from one activity to another. The ending of one and the beginning of another is a good, like a doorway for that second or two or three. Okay, this is finishing, now this is beginning. And I mean, throughout as well, but that, like the door between from one phase or event to another, for me, is a really good opportunity rather than just rushing into it. Okay, I've got to do this now. Okay, that's done now here.
Yeah, even like physical actions like picking something up is like a good mental, right? In order to actually look at it, like to actually be there doing it.
Yeah, more like that's another important thing you brought up, Rick, is more coming into like full stops moments. Like whereas everyone normally spends their life perpetually arriving at something even throughout the whole day, and then they're arriving, and then they go to sleep, and they're thinking about the next day, and lying in bed until they fall asleep. So like coming into a stop, like more frequently. So like you come and you sit down somewhere, like take that moment to just sit there and just completely come to a stop. Like there's nothing else you need to do, and like nowhere else you need to go. And or even like what, like yeah, you transition going from the grocery store to like home or something. So you get in your car, you can just sit in your car for a second, or like maybe a couple minutes, and then just a full stop. And you sprinkle those throughout your day, and like do a little bit of breathing, and like intentionally just relaxing into like the peace of just like not having to do anything in that moment. And then that's gonna create like a baseline, like a more like a more like a more steady baseline that like translates to less reactivity, less agitation throughout the periods of activity throughout your day. So like coming to full stops, and being able to stop, and being able to be your friend in the moments of just being completely alone is what will let you learn how to deal with all that shit when like all this stuff starts happening again. So like being able to like come to peace and come to resolution on your own in seclusion is where like we learn to do it. That's where like we can really like set things straight internally, and like resolve things internally, not by trying to fix them, but by just like stopping trying to do anything about them at all. Just sit there and do nothing. And it's like just breathe again. Do nothing can be misconstrued. Like I don't mean like shikantaza or whatever, but I mean like sitting there, taking some deep breaths and just enjoying the moment, and like not having to think about anything that you need to do per se. And that could last for like 5 or 10 minutes. It doesn't need to be like a super long time, but we all have at least like 10-minute periods at least throughout the day where like, yeah, you don't need to do anything else. Like you could just sit there and chill, and like really taking advantage of those moments to sit there and really, really chill. And then that is where you find like the aha, like the triumphant aspect of the path is like in that joy born out of the relaxation of not having to do anything. And then that will like, wow, now you're in a pretty good mood, and like when you go do something, it like seeps into like other aspects of your life, and um then probably something will annoy you, and like you get tired, you have to work on something, and then like the rinse and repeat, and then like I found that kind of approach to like meditation, rather than like I need to sit an hour a day. I found like the one I'm talking about way more like practical and useful, and um, fruit bearing. So yeah, does anyone have anything to say about that? Or
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you about the full stop, but I also often will take that pause in order to clear things out, come to stillness so that I'm fully engaged in the next activity as well, right? So that I'm not, that I'm as present as I am able to be for whatever the activity happens to be. It's like setting it up for that,
mm-hmm.
right? Not just
Mm-hmm.
the moment to be still, which is wonderful in and of itself, but I mean for it to tip towards that new activity,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then to be very, very to move into that with a very clear mind and a very clear intention as well. And of course, it makes that next activity all the more enjoyable because you're not jumping into the next after that, right? You are for a while really sitting in that activity, whatever it happens to be, whether it has to engage you physically or linguistically or whatever. So yeah, that's for me, another really good reason to do that full stop. So that when I do finally move the vehicle back into gear, if we're going to use a car metaphor, that I'm fully engaged in that next part.
Yeah, that's another good point. The sort of like immersion into what you are doing is as much of a meditation as anything. And like
Right.
and you can
Mm-hmm.
literally do that in any situation. So like the Dhamma isn't like the Dhamma isn't just coming in those 10 minutes like of relaxation. The Dhamma literally applies everywhere, and it's like a full it's a full practice.
Absolutely, but I think in its certain stages, it's easier to put a pin in transitions. For me, anyway, it's easier to remember when the door is swinging to a new activity. Sometimes it's not quite as easy to remember while that activity is in process. So I think that's, to me anyway, it's a useful device to help. And then of course, as that continues, there are those, as you said, sprinkled present moments or awake moments throughout. But definitely the transitions are like an obvious one, right? It's such a gimme. It's almost like training wheels, I want to say,
Yeah.
right? It's like training wheels, using the transitions to come to full stop, clear your mind, re-engaged, be present, and then slide into the next thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like as you're like walking along the path, like there's little like goodies along the way that you could like pick up, and like you eat the goodie, and you keep. That's like that's just what a fruition is. Like you get a little goodie on the path, you keep going. Like, ooh, there's another goodie, and like you're just like walking, but you're not gonna see the goodies if you're not looking at the like down at your feet. Like they're like laid out. Like it's like taking you somewhere. Like it's kind of like some like the law, or like the natural law drops these little goodies, and the goodies like guides you to like some really fucking cool place. So like
The
you keep
princess in the
going.
castle. Dun dun
Yeah,
dun 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 dun.
yeah. It's like
You just gave me a Mario image.
Yeah, it's like collecting little mushrooms and stuff.
Oh, good, goody.
Yeah. And you might be taking some mushrooms, some special kinds of mushrooms. Like, like there's a lot of different kinds of mushrooms out there. So, whatever increases like your enthusiasm and like joy is effective practice. Like, not effective practice is practice that you actually resent doing. And then how you're not even practicing at that point. You're just
right. You're forcing yourself into
Yeah.
doing an activity that you would prefer not to, for whatever reason, and that's
that would
back
be
to
called work.
right, right, and that's back to shoulds again. I should be this. I should be doing that, and then that's setting up that whole ego cycle again about what expectations and such. So yeah, that's completely the wrong direction. I agree. Yep.
I got a little question on jhānas. I've been observing this phenomena of working with jhānas and then getting myself really relaxed, getting myself to a state where I'm like euphoric and smiling and almost like crying, and everything is like so zoomed out that I feel like I'm about to explode. But then fear arises. As soon as I'm about to explode, like fear arises. And I know I'm supposed to toss that fear out, but I keep looking at that fear and I keep clinging to that fear. So it always like brings me back again. Okay, so let's restart again. Let's go again. It almost like this hindrance comes up of fear. I just thought it's quite interesting. It's like every time I get like, it gets me so emotional. It gets me like almost tears overflowing my eyes, and so enjoyable. Not from like, I wouldn't say it's like, it's like a high, but at the same time, a lot of fear comes with that feeling as well, because that means of letting go of that target, as I keep calling that, like that person that arises their fear within. I don't know if that makes sense. That person that has that fear, that he has to go in order to move past that particular point inside the jhana.
Usually what this type of fear comes from is a deep-seated belief and feeling that it's not okay to be happy for no reason. So like society has taught you to be miserable, and it's kind of like at moments sort of punished you or taken advantage of you for being happy, either at some like early childhood experience or like just throughout like life as a whole. Like society, most people are not 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 crying tears of joy at how beautiful life is, how beautiful this experience is, and how enjoyable it is, and how happy you can really just be for no reason, just to be happy, just because being alive is so great. And you feel somehow that you are doing something wrong by doing this, because it's so unfamiliar and so not the status quo, that a fear arises, like, oh, like this must like usually, like, you take like if you take some drugs and you start feeling really good, like you always have that thought, like, oh, like this is good, but it's like it's going to have like repercussions, like this high is going to have repercussions. But like that's kind of like the normal way to think, is like because you've been trying to get happiness from pleasure, and when the pleasure goes away, there's suffering. So like you think that this happiness is going to have repercussions, and then also society has taught you that, oh, you can't be happy, you have to be striving for something, and like you can never be satisfied, you have to always be arriving and always trying to be better and always trying to get the new thing. Like, so like there is a guilt and a fear that comes out of that. That's the real fear that stops you from just continuing to just simply be happy and enjoy the beauty of that, the beauty and the transformation of that experience. So you kind of have to internally just become a lion and go, fuck you, society, yippee, and keep enjoying yourself. And then just let go of that fear completely. I think most people, a lot of people attribute that fear to like, oh, you think I'm afraid to like disappear, like I'm afraid to have ego death, or there's an identity that's clinging to my sense of self that like doesn't want to disappear. No, that's not the real fear. The real fear comes out of that conditioning I was talking about, because what the mind really wants to do, what the self really wants to do, is go into that ecstasy and go into that bliss of 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 disappearing, and then the relief of emptiness and the relief of not hanging on to anything. That's what it really wants to do. But what's stopping it is the conditioned fear that somehow you're doing something wrong, the child mind. That it's not a rational fear, it's an irrational fear that comes from habits and tendencies and beliefs and structured belief systems that we have inherited through our life on this planet and human civilization. So literally what to do is just literally discard it. Just throw it out like it's garbage. Like it's not useful. It doesn't help you. It doesn't make you a better citizen. It doesn't make more people like you. There's nothing useful about this fear. So you just throw it out, because um, you have been given permission to be happy. So you've been being given permission by the Buddha himself and the lineage of teachers that followed after. And it's the wheel of the Dhamma that's rolling. So there's a profound force behind it that's like cosmic proportions, and like the fear is like literally so insignificant, and like nobody on the planet is more important than the wheel of the Dhamma taking place inside you and unfolding in its full beauty and full splendor. So hope that helps. But like I've experienced similar things, and like um, I'm pretty certain like that's a pretty common fear, and that's usually where it comes from.
Yeah, you've pinpointed it quite well. There's a lot of like guilt feeling arising with that fear. It's like feeling guilty for feeling good, and then the fear of death essentially is the fear of being kicked out of society for feeling good, for not fitting in. So
right.
What if I stand out? I'm gonna get kicked out. I'm not gonna eat. I'm gonna die. La 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 la. The fear continues even deeper than that. But I have noticed that like a lot of times you can overcome it in solitude, especially. But when there's other people and I'm just sitting there and just smiling, and I like almost like crying tears of joy, and like sometimes in public, that arises a bit more than when I'm in solitude. In solitude, I can kind of let go, but around the people, it's still a bit clinginess, because there's more data, I guess, more information around you. So more happening, more noise, but still kind of a bit overstimulated.
Yeah, that's why the main like practice is born out of seclusion. Like the main, like that's in the ānāpānasati Sutta, or the MN 111 Majjhima Nikaya or whatever. It says like joy and rapture or something born out of seclusion. Like it's in the sutta. It says born out of seclusion. So that's how it works. Like this kind of experience is born out of seclusion, and then like eventually it's kind of like after that, the full fruition of that experience, like it's hard to like be afraid of things anymore. Like even when you're doing stuff, like you kind of just, you're above it, and you see like through the show, and like you see you see it's all the world's a stage and it's all a play, and like none of it actually matters. It's all fucking point. Like none of it matters. So like you might as well enjoy yourself and just play the game. But there's no stakes involved. Like there's literally no stakes because you have experienced emptiness. You have experienced what it means to lose everything, and you actually found out it's not scary at all. It's a fucking nirvana. It's like a bliss, and it's like that's it. Like, and like everything that you're scared of had to do with losing something, but actually losing everything is the best fucking experience you could possibly have. So that's going to have significant implications and how you feel and the rest of your activities and whatnot. And you're just gonna be actually having a good time and like playing a game really. And like none of it is that serious. Nothing is serious. Really. There's nothing important and there's nothing serious. So you can literally have a laugh. You're gonna always have a laugh about something. I mean, I wouldn't recommend doing it at funerals, but like just try to like read the room here and there. But
yeah, this comes to my mind, like carrying a luggage and having a bunch of useless things in your luggage and always dragging it everywhere around and being like, what if I need this? What about this? What if I need this? In every particular situation. Even though you're living like in some kind of desert island where like cell phones don't work, or like batteries, you can't even charge batteries, but yet you're still carrying that useless stuff all the way around. Even if your survival is still okay, you're just chilling on the beach. That's how I always like seen it. Just useless kind of junk, and as soon as you let go, free yourself of it, like you can see how much smoother the world even looks like everything is just, it's like skateboarding or surfing, or like it's just flowing through everything.
That's the key right there. Flow. It's about flow. It's entering the flow.
What do you guys think about the science of like they're trying to discover how to enter flow states, and they're all complicating the flow states, it almost seems like.
Good. Well, good. Just what can I say? Good luck to them. You don't need science to do it, but good luck to them. It's like one day just get an injection.
I think whatever gets people practicing more, and like that's something I found really funny about people, is that if I just mention some kind of neurochemical or like say some scientific buzzwords and then teach them the Dhamma, like feed it into that, like they're gonna be like, oh okay, like, oh, this is real, like, oh, it's like a real thing now, okay, I never knew it's like the serotonin and the dopamine, like, so like you
have to use those. You have to use those holy scientific words.
It's like
it's like the package, right? Yeah, it's a package.
Yeah, it's like it's people who never like, they probably never read a scientific literature in their life, but like you just mentioned some sciencey words, they're like, they're like gonna be like convinced. And that's how most people are. So if people bring a science into meditation and the Dhamma, I think that's great. Like that's the more the better. And like, and there is physical ramifications. Like, don't get me wrong, there is science to it. Like the taking deeper breaths and relaxing does have chemical ramifications, and like the way the stress hormones work, it's going to change all that. And like there's this guy like Wim Hof, he can actually, like, people inject him with a virus or something and he literally breathes his immune system into activity and like conquers it through breathing, and like he's able to survive like insanely like cold temperatures that most people would get frostbite and die in, just through his breathing activity. So it has like real world physical scientific ramifications, like this type of stuff, and it's really interesting for people who are actually interested in the science of it. So I think that's great, like good for them. But also another added benefit is just like put some like people who think this stuff is woo-woo into like perspective of like, no, it actually it actually makes makes you happier, and it actually makes like the experience like more enjoyable. Because like, yeah, a funny thing is a lot of people think like they can't be happy unless they're on some kind of substance. So like they'll like take a substance and they'll like be like, okay, now I can be happy, and then it's enjoy themselves or whatever, whether it's like drinking or like any other drug. So if you tell them like, hey man, there's already these drugs inside your brain called neurochemicals, and you can get high on them just by taking some deep breaths, then that's going to give them excuse, like it's going to give them a permission and a justification to actually just be happy, because like people believe in like superstitious things, like so I think it's um uh wonderful, you know. I think the Dhamma should be pragmatic, you know. I think that's some good things I found about Dhammarato's teaching is it's very like real, in the sense that one thing that stuck out to me about him is that his emphasis on coming out of magical thinking. So there's there's nothing you need to believe about it. The idea is to stop believing in stuff and come out of magical thinking and just be in the reality of this present moment. And this present moment is undeniable. Like everything else is shaky territory. Like everything you project into the future and everything you recall about the past is shaky territory. Like your mind is changing it all the time, and it's like subject to mistakes. Like you can remember something incorrectly, and even worse so, project into the future incorrectly. In fact, nobody projects into the future correctly. Some tricksters might tell you they can, but nobody does. Nobody knows what's coming in the future. So coming out of all that magical thinking and just being in the fact of your experience. And the fact of your experience, yeah, there's nothing you need to believe, or like there's nothing woo about it. There's nothing you need to believe in. It's just there. And that simplicity is when you can actually let the weight off your shoulder and relax, because there's no uncertainty. There's absolutely no doubt and no uncertainty and no fear in the experience of this moment. Like the doubt and the fear and the uncertainty all is fabricated, like imagination concepts and stuff like that.
The present moment is magical enough already. Like there is no need to add another layer, as you said.
Yeah, it's magical in the sense that it's a miracle just to be here, just to be alive. That's magic enough, right? If you want to use that magic in that context, I completely agree.
I think it's interesting though that, you know, the folks that are doing what you were talking about, Carl, like trying to, I don't know, scientifically prove, I guess, some of these states, like use data to replicate this or that or whatever. It's interesting how they're, in their vernacular, they're just trying to make sure, right? They're trying to double check. It's really, really real. But those are still just categories too. You know, those are still categories. And the whole thing ends up being experiential rather than it being intellectual categories or provable data. I mean, it's nice. I guess it's comfortable for us to lean back into it. So yeah, okay, based on our, you know, Western methods of scientific inquiry, okay, we can check these boxes and stuff. But even knowing that, okay, you know, this probability, this percentage, this superposition or whatever, in the end, it still comes back down to practicing in the present moment, regardless of all the studies or whatnot. I mean, you can't study your way into the insights. You can't practice your way into the experience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't study your way into the experience, right? It's absolutely necessary to actually sit down and do the work yourself, right? On your own.
That they are
So-
actually trying to get you to flow so you can work better. They're essentially using it so you can work better. But what I see is a lot of people getting into flow and then they don't want to work at all.
right.
paradox.
It strips it away. It's like, wait a second, why can't I just sit here now? Why do I have to use it for something? This is great.
You don't have to use it. Exactly. That's the whole concept of the Buddha. Literally not doing anything. And
It's like holding a hammer, and instead of using it, just like, I just like the feel of this hammer. It's just the weight of it, the heft of it is nice and smooth. It's kind of comfortable in my hand. I'm just gonna sit with it.
That's the whole idea. Yeah, there's
hilarious.
nothing to do and nowhere to go. That's the whole point. So that's a good thing. That's a sign of good practice.
And it's interesting to see how, corporate culture, they're trying to find ways to harness meditation as a way of increasing efficiency and profit. Like, how can we meditate ourselves rich or richer?
How can we feed the machine even more? How are we going to make more money for Google? Right? Let's teach some meditation. Right? That's complete.
Let's get these mucksuckers. Let's get these mucksuckers meditating, so then they'll get us even more further.
Yeah. That's silly. Yeah. But another thing you said, Rick, that reminded me of like the whole scientific study of it, of like meditation and meditation related phenomena. And the brain and the neurochemicals and the hormones. These are all I would call the map. And it's important not to mistake the actual territory for the map, which is the real experience. So there might be a correlation. There might be a correlation. And to give credit where credit's due, I heard this analogy from this guy named Francis Lucille. So I'm like stealing it, but it makes a lot of sense. There might be a correlation between aspects of your experience and the brain or different chemicals, but the experience is the reality. In the same way, California itself, like driving around California, is California. And every point in California, there's a spot on the map, which is an image of California. It's a concept of California. So, and people do this with the Dhamma too. They mistake the map for the actual territory. Now, the map is useful. So all the suttas, all the instructions, all the steps, all the ways we can conceptualize and present the Dhamma even is useful in the sense the map is help you navigate the territory, but the map is not the territory itself. So that's an important distinction. So but even the map of the Dhamma is wholesome. So that's beautiful. So even when you're just staring at the map and you're not going around and you're not getting into the actual jhana, the actual meditation of it, it's still you're spending time occupied on something wholesome rather than unwholesome.
Right, absolutely. So, just like these chats that Dhammarato has, or even our groups here, that's still wholesome because it's describing the map, even if you're not walking on that ground. Yes. It's still better in a relative way than you can do both being distracted. Oh, sure. Yeah.
So you can be walking the territory, holding the map in your hand, or even during a conversation, walking the territory. Ideally, I recommend doing it that way. So coming into taking some deep breaths, even during the Sangha call, taking some deep breaths, chilling out, relaxing. seeing the experiential correlate or the experiential correlation to what we're talking about. Is that's how I found my practice so beneficial, is doing that while Dhammarato's talking to me. So like I'll see what he's talking about experientially, and like try to test it or try to see what he means, like in the experience of it, like especially when he's giving like some pointers, like one time he was telling me like oh, feel the shirt against your skin, and like I started like focusing on that, and then like I could feel like what he was trying to get at, like how like the sensations of the body can like feel like really good, and like there's a kind of like intimacy to it, and like all kinds of cool stuff like that. And like there's kind of like little cool nuggets of wisdom he puts that has like maybe like double meanings. So it has like sometimes something he says has like a conceptual meaning.
He used to call those Dharma bombs. I remember back in the day, he would after a sit or after, he would call them Dharma bombs. He said, "Don't wait, they'll go off later. They're not gonna hit you now, but they're gonna explode later. Your mind will be blown." And I'll never forget him talking about these Dharma bombs.
So there's Dharma bombs that explode later, like they're timers, but there's also Dharma bombs that explode upon impact. And some of those Dharma bombs that explode later might become Dharma bombs that explode on impact as you mature and evolve. So like, that's both, but yes, I've experienced both types, and they're both like where you'll hear something and then you'll be walking around and be like, oh, that's what he meant. And it's like the full profundity of like what they said like implements itself in you, and like those are like planting seeds. Like another way you can think of it is like a seed that is planted that like eventually blossoms and fruits, bears.
You can use whatever violent or gentle metaphor you want.
Yeah. I like Dharma bombs, so I've literally never heard that before. That's funny.
Yeah, maybe he stopped saying it, but I won't forget that. Gents, I have to head out. I've got
perfect.
Making a transition here, so nice to see everybody, and I will catch you on the flip side. Bye, guys.
All right, guys. Great talking to you. Wonderful. Great seeing everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for sharing, Carl. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for sharing the things you said, Carl, and good to see you, DJ. I mean, DJ as always. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a wonderful talk. Yeah, I think so. We're gonna wrap it up now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to start getting. I would stay longer, but I have to go to work.
Oh yeah, no. It's a good talk. It was a wonderful talk. Wonderful hearing you talk.